This episode is brought to you by HASA. Liquid is clearly better. Liquid chlorine is the highest purity, works immediately, has no added cyanuric acid or calcium, and it will leave your pool safe, clean, and clear. And by the Bottom Feeder professional grade battery powered vacuum system. It sucks to clean pools, so cleaning pools sucks less. Get $100 off with code DVB100.
This episode is brought to you by Skimmer, the #1 pool service software in North America. With Skimmer, you can streamline your schedule, grow your revenue, and keep your customers coming back with 5-star service. Whether you're a one-person operation or an established team, Skimmer is your partner in success. Visit getskimmer.com/poolguy to try Skimmer for free for 30 days.
The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show. The Pool Guy Podcast Show.
Hi, welcome to the Pool Guy Podcast Show. In this episode, I'm going to go over cartridge filters and the brands, the different manufacturers of them. They're not all created equal. I'm going to go over what you should be replacing your cartridge filters with once they wear out, and I'll cover some of the major brands that are on the market today. Join my coaching program and take your pool service to the next level. Connect with other pool pros in your area, gain valuable knowledge, and transform your business with personalized one-on-one advice from me. With over 36 years of experience, I'm here to help you succeed like never before. Learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Whenever I do a podcast on cartridge filters, I always get like a purist emailing me or criticizing me for not going with the manufactured cartridges again. You know, if they have a Jandy filter, they're like, why don't you just get the Jandy cartridges? Or, you know, with Hayward cartridge filters are the best. Well, no one really buys the manufactured cartridges after the fact. There's several reasons for it. It's because a lot of the off-brand cartridge filters are just as good or even better than the manufactured cartridges that are in there. Also, the price point of the manufactured cartridges aren't the greatest. If you wanted to get, let's say you have a Pentair Clean and Clear Plus 420 cartridge filter, and you wanted to get the actual replacement cartridges for those filters, you could purchase those from your supplier or a local pool store, and they are the Pentair 179135, and they retail for about $320 if you wanted to go with the manufactured brand filters, or you can buy another brand filter that probably is just as good. For example, XL filters, and they're out of Texas. They actually sell a 4-pack replacement. They're actually really good filters, and I'll go over some of the material as well. These are really high quality cartridges, and they retail for $179.99. So you can get them for $180, which is a substantial savings over the name brand. And if you wanted to replace those with the pleat code, they're the PCC 105, and the Unicell has the C-7471, and the Filbert has the FC-1977. And I'll touch on these other brands here, Pleco, Unicell, and Filbert. I did a video several years back where I covered these different cartridges. You may pull it up on YouTube. I put like one each in a filter, let it run for, I think, 5 months or 6 months, and then I took them out and compared them together, and you can see the difference of the material. Now, they're all not made with the same material. They're all a little bit different. Pleatco probably has the thickest material over the other filter types. So there is a difference between cheap paper and high quality spun-bound polyester. And not to say that an off-brand is necessarily bad just because it's a lower price. I mean, you have a 4-pack of these. You can buy these. They're called the Optimum Pool Technology cartridges 4-pack for $139. So I'm not saying that, you know, the price is a huge indicator of the quality. It's all different material. And you may notice a difference, you may not notice a difference. The Pleatco are pretty comparable in price to the Pentair cartridges, but of course the quality of the material from the Pleatco, you're actually paying for that. And by the way, Pentair does own Pleatco now. They purchased the company. I'm not exactly sure the reasoning behind it. I would assume they just needed inventory because they had a problem with getting their cartridges out and their filters, and they probably saw that Pleatco was for sale. And it's not a super large company, even though they seem bigger because they advertise like crazy. they had like the pool guy and pool gal of the year contest, and they advertised on the back of Aqua magazine for like 15 years. I mean, forever. So they seemed like a big company, but they weren't really that big actually. They were a smaller company, and Pentair bought them out, and they took their cartridge technology. And I'm wondering if they're going to still sell to other companies like Aquastar, and I think Waterway also uses the pleat coat cartridges. I don't see why they wouldn't, but maybe they can muscle out their competitors by not renewing their contracts for the pleat coat cartridges that come standard in some cartridge brands like the Aquastar Pipeline filter. Has a pleat coat filter that comes sold with it when you purchase it. So there is some nice technology with the pleat coat. Since I'm talking about it, I might as well just continue here. They have the free flow core technology. Excel Filters has a very similar core as pleat coat. I'm not sure if it was patented. Probably not, because other manufacturers can copy it. And it does have, again, the thickest material. It almost feels like plastic and not a cloth. So some people like him, some people don't like him. It just depends on your preference for the cartridges. I like the pleat coat, but I've heard other pool guys say that they're not the greatest, and they feel like they don't filter as well as just the regular remade material that comes with the other cartridges. Now, Filbert and I believe Unicel are both local here in California. Don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure Unicel and Filbert are local companies here. And they do make the some branded products for Superior Pool Products and for SCP, which is Pool Corp. And you may buy a box of cartridges at your supplier, and you open them up, and they could be either Filbert or Unicel filters, and they're made specifically for Pool Corp with their branded logo. But they are a Filbert or Unicel filter, and you can find the matching number pretty easily by typing it into Google. Let's say you have a Pentair Clean and Clear 520. I'll go one size larger. So the OEM is R173578. Again, just type this in Google and it'll give you all of these numbers. There's no need to have a catalog anymore or to look for things. It's pretty nice to have everything in at your fingertips. Back in the day, we would take the cartridges into the pool store, put it on this little, even suppliers had these like a little mat, and it had like a circle that you could match up the cartridge with, and then you can order the size you want. Those days are pretty much over with everything just being online here. So pleat coat has a PCC 130, Filbert has the FC 1978, Unicel has the C7472, Excel has the XLS 7482, and then of course the off-brands will also have that. Most of them will reference the OEM part, which is the R173578. And then from there, you can find the cartridges. And usually people prefer one cartridge over another. Like for instance, if I were to choose between pleat coat, Excel, Unicel, and Filbert, I would take the pleat coat cartridge because I like pleat coat and I think they make a really good quality cartridge. A lot of guys like the Unicel because the remade material is really easy to clean and durable. So again, it's something that is your preference for the cartridge. You pick what you like and you kind of stick with that brand. I kind of like to stick with the brand because it's easy for me I'm familiar with it and I think it works great. I really haven't had a problem with any of the brands. So I can't say that pleat coat is like, head and shoulders above everyone else. Yes, the material is different. And the most similar one to it would be the XL filters out of Texas. They're pretty close to the pleat coat material. And then Filbert and Unicel, their material is very similar to each other. But really, you can't go wrong with any of these four brands. They're all going to be reliable. And then you have a slew of off brands that are on the market as well. And I just would recommend sticking with one of these well-known brands. Now let me talk to you a little bit about when to change out the cartridges, because now that I went over the brands here, you may be wondering, well, when exactly do I change out the cartridges? Well, I think if you have the quad type 4 cartridge filter set up on your route at a pool stop, that those should be changed out every 3 years, and that's it. I wouldn't go any further than that. You may go a little less depending on how weathered they get in your area, especially if you have an area where there's a lot of dirt. They may wear out quicker, and I just wouldn't go past 3 years. I find that the 3-year mark is kind of like the sweet spot for replacing these. So what I do is I'll put in a new set, and let's say I put a new set in 2023 in June. That means that they're due up in June 2026. I'll just go there and I'll replace them. You can write on the filter with a Sharpie the date you installed them. That's probably the easiest way to keep records, in my opinion, is just to write on the filter when you change them and then when they're due again. And that way you kind of stick with that routine. It makes things easy, and the quad cartridge filters last about 3 years. Now, if you have a single cartridge filter, those won't last probably past a year. Most of those last 6 months to 9 months. You got to change those out because they're doing a lot more filtration and they wear out a lot sooner. So keep that in mind if you have the smaller cartridge filter. Probably the only exception would be the Aquastar pipeline because it has that special pleat coat filter cartridge that probably would last. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it'll probably last the same amount of time as the quad type 4 cartridge filters. So you're not replacing the Aquastar pipeline filter every 6 to 9 months. You probably can go 2 or 3 years with that cartridge, in my opinion. It's just a really well-made cartridge. How do you know when the cartridges are worn out? Well, there's a few indicators. Sometimes the pressure gauge is not the indicator because sometimes if you have a quad cartridge filter, the pressure gauge doesn't really move that much to indicate that there's very low flow. Again, flow is a good indicator. So if you notice, like a spa spillway is kind of like the key point that I look at all the time when I look at flow. You can't really look at the return jets or the skimmer because you don't really see flow. Sometimes if it's really clogged up and the filters are really bad, you'll notice a big drop off in the suction from the skimmer. But for me, the spa spillway, if there is an attached spa, is the best indicator of flow. If you have a VS pump, I would put it at the 3450 RPM mark, the full speed. If you have a single speed pump, just look at the spa spillway, and water should be spilling over. That's why they call it a spa spillway. If water is just trickling over or barely getting over there, that's a good indicator that there's not a lot of flow. Even though the return jets and the skimmer may be fine, the spa spillway is my indicator that, hey, the flow has slowed down quite a bit in this pool, and if the gauge doesn't indicate it, I'll take it apart, clean the cartridge filters, and inspect them to see if that's the problem. And 9 times out of 10, when I see the flow that bad, the gauge is not indicating it, and there's really not other indicators. Sometimes, yes, you can notice in the skimmer the flow has slowed down, and the automatic cleaner is not moving as fast as it used to. The suction cleaner is not moving around the pool and zipping around. But when you take the filter apart, you'll see that the bands of the cartridges are broken. So that's one indicator. And if the bands are broken and the pleats are kind of opened up, that indicates that those cartridges are not filtering well. The bands should be intact and the little pleats should be really close together. That's where the cartridge filter gets its amazing square footage. I mean, if you think about it, a 520 square foot cartridge filter is like, 6 or 7 times bigger, 8 times bigger than a 60 square foot DE filter, because the pleats have extra square footage because they kind of go in and then back out and the other side in and out all around the cartridge. Now, if these are expanded and flat, you're not going to get that amazing square footage, and you'll notice that in the flow of the pool. So once I notice that the bands are cracked or bands are torn and the tops sometimes are cracked on the cartridges and the pleats are kind of wide and exposed, then I know the cartridges are no good. Now, when you get to a 3-year mark, sometimes you don't even see indicators that they're bad, but I still like to replace them because, the material is basically a paper. And if you get a lot of dirt and algae and different things in there, yes, you can hose it off and clean them, but it's going to kind of get into the material over time. And that's why a lot of times after you clean the cartridges, you're still going to see a kind of residue or a stain, I should say, a brown stain. They're not going to come out white as if they were brand new. And that's because the material is getting kind of saturated with dirt, algae, and stuff that doesn't really come out of the material. And that's why the 3-year mark is important with the quad cartridge filters and a much shorter time with the single cartridge filter. So keep that in mind, that they don't last forever, and they are just a paper product, so you want to change them on the schedule that I mentioned here. So that's the indicator they're not working. Sometimes the pressure gauge is an indicator, especially for a single cartridge filter. It'll be maybe at 20. You'll clean it, put it back in. The next week you get there, it's at 25 or 27. And you can really notice a significant drop off in flow with the single cartridge filters over the 4 quad type cartridge filters. Now, I mention this all the time when I talk about cartridge filters and cartridge replacements. If you have a Stay Right System 3 filter, either the big one, the 450 square foot, you really don't need to change those cartridges every 3 years. Number one, they're super expensive, so you don't want to be changing them every 3 years anyway. I don't know why they're so expensive, but they cost a fortune to change them. In fact, let me look up the retail price to kind of let you know how expensive these things are. Okay, we have a few here. We have the, not sure what store that is, $7.49. Then you have Pool Supply for Less, $6.49. And then you have Leslie's Pool Supply, $9.19. I mean, you might as well just buy a whole new filter in that case. That's crazy. Pool Parts cartridges, $6.77. So they're pretty expensive cartridges. And if you do these every 3 years, the customer is not going to be extremely happy with you when you're replacing these filters at that extent. So it's something to consider that these are designed to last longer anyway, because there's this gigantic one and then the small one in the center. And for some reason, the pleats seem to really last a long time. Now, eventually the bands are going to break, the pleats are going to expand, and you have to replace them. So I would say, I'm going to go out and say that maybe every 5 or 6 years you can replace these cartridges. Some people may want to replace them every 4 years, but at the 3-year mark, they still look pretty good, and they have such a large surface area, and they're so well made by the manufacturer that I don't really think they wear out anywhere near as much as the quad type filters. In fact, I love the Stay Right System 3 filter. I just think it takes up too much real estate in the backyard, and it's really a time consuming filter to clean. Even with the multi-torque set to get the clamps off, it does take a lot of time, and that big cartridge can be really heavy when it's waterlogged and full of dirt. So to me, it's a little bit inconvenient, but they are a great filter. And I always joke that the tank could survive a nuclear blast because it's such a thick material that, I don't know, I've never even heard of anyone having one of these filter tanks crack on them. But all the parts for this thing are expensive. Even the O-ring is like $60 or $70. So it's just an expensive filter to operate. I mean, brand new, these retail for about $1,500. But I don't think you would want to be replacing the cartridges at $700 or $900. You can find them a little less expensive. I mean, I think the sweet spot is around $650 for a set of these cartridges, which is still double or triple what a quad cartridge filter replacement goes for. So if you're going to get a Stay Right System 3 filter, just realize that the parts are pretty expensive. And again, all the brands, in my opinion, they're not equal. There's better material than others. And you'll find a brand that you like and you'll gravitate towards. I like Pleatco, so I'm going to always replace them with Pleatco whenever I can find them. And sometimes you're going for the bargain cartridges, and so sometimes the branded label at your supplier is the cheapest, and that's perfectly fine. They're made by a manufacturer that's pretty well known. Filbert or Unicell makes them, so I have no problem buying any branded cartridge filter at the warehouse. If you're looking for other podcasts that I recorded, you can find those on my website, swimmingpoollearning.com. And on the banner, click on the podcast icon. That'll bring a menu of 1,600 podcasts. And if you're interested in the coaching program that I offer, you can learn more at poolguycoaching.com. Thanks for listening to this podcast. Have a great rest of your week. God bless. This episode is brought to you by HASA, providing products that deliver clean, healthy water for every aspect of everyday life. The bottom feeder battery-powered vacuum system, portable, powerful, and only weighs 12 pounds. And Skimmer. Get Skimmer, America's #1 pool service software. Podcast listeners can try Skimmer for free at getskimmer.com/poolguy.